I was sitting on the couch in my living room, feet up, eyes glued to the TV screen. It was a quiet Saturday night, just me and the sound of the rain against the windows. Sarah was away for the weekend with her friends, and I was looking forward to the break. No work stress, no wedding talk, no endless plans for a life I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the message and saw Sarah's name on the screen. I didn't think much of it. Maybe just a picture of her and her friends or something about her weekend. But what I read froze me. Jack, I need to tell you something. I made a huge mistake. I slept with Mike. It just happened and I can't pretend it didn't. I'm getting back with him. I hope you understand. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity, my thumb hovering over the screen, not knowing if I should reply at all. But I did. My mind couldn't catch up with the weight of what I was reading. So I just typed, "Thanks." I didn't feel anything when I hit send. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. Like the wind had been knocked out of me, but there was no air to breathe in the first place. I dropped the phone on the couch beside me and rubbed my eyes, trying to make sense of it all. But there was nothing to make sense of. She was gone. My fiancée, the woman I'd been planning a future with, had chosen someone else. She wasn't just leaving me for him. She was taking the life we'd built together and throwing it in the trash. I felt something twist inside my chest, but it was so far away, it didn't matter. I immediately went to my bank app, canceled the automatic payments on the engagement ring. No point in paying for a symbol of a future I wasn't going to have. That $10,000 was out of my hands now. A part of me wanted to text her back, ask her how long she'd been planning this, if she ever really loved me. But I couldn't. What was there left to say? Instead, I opened my email and sent her a message. The arrangement to pay for the ring is canceled. I won't be making any more payments. It's your responsibility now. I felt nothing as I hit send. And then it hit me, this was it. The engagement was over. The life we'd planned was over. It wasn't just the ring. It was everything. I leaned back, closing my eyes, trying to let the shock pass. But it didn't. Instead, I got up and started going through the apartment, making a list of what I needed to do next. First, my apartment. She didn't have any legal claim to it anymore. I was done. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone else take anything from me. I opened the door to the guest bedroom, the one Sarah had turned into her space, and just stood there for a second, staring at the empty shelves, the bed she used to sleep in, the suitcase she had left behind. It was all hers, all the things we'd planned for. But now, felt like I was staring at a ghost. I had already called the bank and canceled the automatic payments on the ring, but the reality was sinking in. I wasn't just losing her. I was losing everything we'd worked toward, everything I thought we'd build. My phone buzzed again, another email. It was the jewelry store, the one where Sarah had picked out the ring. I tapped it open, knowing it was bad, but I hadn't been prepared for this. $80,000. That's how much I owed now. Not just for the ring, but for every dream we'd had. Every plan that would never come to life. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying not to feel like I was drowning. I should have known better. I should have realized that I was the one carrying the weight of this relationship all along. That ring wasn't just a symbol. It was a commitment, and I was the one financing it. Now it felt like I was drowning in it. I needed advice. I needed to talk to someone who knew what the hell they were doing. So I dialed my lawyer, Richard. "Jack, hey," he answered, his voice calm, like he was used to handling stuff like this. "What's going on?" I explained everything, told him about Sarah's message, the canceled payments, the ring debt. Richard listened, but I could hear him already processing it all in his head, running through the legal stuff I didn't want to deal with. "Okay, here's the deal," he said. "You're not legally on the hook for that ring. You didn't agree to take on that debt for the ring in your name. She's the one who signed for it. If she wants to fight it, you'll need to protect yourself, but right now, she can't force you to pay. You're fine there." I let out a long breath. The weight in my chest lightened just a bit, but only a bit. "And the apartment?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Same thing. If she moved out and left without any legal rights, you don't need to worry about her coming back for anything." But, Richard added, You need to be careful. If she's trying to make a case out of the apartment, you might need to lock things down more securely. Get your assets in place." I nodded, even though I was already checking the locks on the door in my head. I couldn't let her come back. Not after what she'd done. "Thanks," I said, though I didn't feel grateful. I didn't feel anything at all. We hung up, and I sat there in the silence of the apartment, staring at the walls we'd painted together, the furniture we'd picked out like we were going to build a life here. Now it all felt like a punch in the gut. I started going through the list of wedding vendors, one by one, sending out the same email. "I'm canceling the wedding. Please void all contracts. Return any deposits." It was painful, like pulling out my teeth one by one. There were non-refundable deposits. $15,000 worth. Money I'd never see again. And for what? For a wedding that wasn't happening. For a life that wasn't mine anymore. As I sat there, staring at the screen, something clicked. This wasn't just about losing Sarah. This was about losing everything I'd worked for, everything I'd trusted, everything I thought I could build. All of it gone. I sighed, rubbing my eyes, wondering when this emptiness would stop, when I'd finally get some kind of relief. But right then, all I could do was look at the bills, the deposits, the canceled contracts, and wonder where I would go from here. I had no plan, no idea, just a giant mess of lost time and energy, and $80,000 worth of debt. I started drafting an email to Sarah. Maybe it was petty, maybe it was cruel, but I was done pretending that any of this wasn't her fault. "You wanted to leave, you can figure out the ring. I'm not paying for it. I'm not paying for anything. You chose him. This is your mess now." I hit send, and the weight didn't lift. It just settled heavier in my chest. I didn't know how to fix my life. I didn't know where I'd be in a year. But I knew one thing. The person I was before, the one who would have swallowed this pain and kept paying for that damn ring, was gone. Now it was just me, and I was starting to learn what that meant. I hadn't even made it through the email to the wedding vendors when my phone buzzed again. I glanced down and saw Sarah's mom's name on the screen, Linda. I knew what this was about. It wasn't even a question. I took a breath, trying to brace myself for whatever was coming. I answered with a tight, "Hello, Jack?" Linda's voice came through, softer than I expected, almost concerned. "I hope you're doing okay. I heard about what happened, and I'm really sorry you two are going through this." I didn't say anything right away. I was trying to figure out how long this act would last before she switched into what I knew was coming. "I just want to make sure you're being fair here," she continued, her voice shifting. "You know, Sarah's really upset. She's devastated, Jack. And on top of everything else, now you're stopping the payments on the ring. I'm sure you understand that's a part of your commitment to her, to the engagement." There it was, the entitled part. The part where Linda assumed I was still obligated to fix everything that Sarah had broken. I didn't flinch. "Linda, I'm sorry, but the engagement's over. Since Sarah ended it, the financial arrangement for the ring is canceled. I'm not responsible for it anymore." "Oh, Jack," Linda sighed, like I was missing the point. "This isn't about you being right or wrong. It's about what's fair. You don't just get to walk away from all of this. That ring was a symbol of your future together, and you should be helping Sarah take care of it. She's going through a hard time, and the least you can do is be there for her." I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. She's the one who ended it. She chose Mike. You're asking me to keep paying for something that isn't even my problem anymore. "Don't be petty, Jack," she shot back, and I could hear the shift in her tone. Sharp now. "This is cruel. You're trying to punish Sarah for making a mistake. She didn't mean for any of this to happen." I stayed calm, even though the words felt like a slap. "I'm not punishing her. I'm just not going to keep paying for a ring she no longer wants. She made her choice. I'm not going to be stuck cleaning up the mess she made." Linda was silent for a moment, then came back with a different tactic. "You know, Jack, you used to be such a nice guy. You were going to marry my daughter. You were going to be a part of our family. I thought you cared about Sarah." Her voice quivered just enough to sound like she was on the edge of tears. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that I'd loved Sarah with everything I had, that I was the one left picking up the pieces. But instead I said, I do care about her. That's why I'm not doing this. If you think paying off a ring will fix anything, then you're wrong. It's over. Her voice became sharp again, like the knife she'd been holding all along had finally come out. I'm not sure who you think you are, Jack, but if you don't honor your commitment to my daughter, I swear, you'll regret it. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. It's not my commitment anymore. Sarah ended it. I'm not her keeper, and I'm not her backup plan. She's the one who made this choice. Another long silence. Then she finally said, Fine, but you're going to regret treating her like this. I didn't respond, just let the silence stretch out between us. After a beat, she added, I'll be talking to Sarah. She'll need help with this, Jack. You can't just leave her hanging. Goodbye, Linda, I said. Before hanging up, I stared at the phone for a second, feeling like I'd just been drained of everything. How had it come to this? How had everything I'd thought I could count on turned into this mess? I picked up the phone again, dialing Richard. He picked up almost immediately, probably sensing the frustration in my voice. Richard, I said, getting straight to the point. I just got off the phone with Sarah's mom. She's saying I'm still responsible for the ring, that I need to help Sarah through this. What do I do? Don't worry about Linda, Richard said, his voice steady, reassuring. She's trying to guilt-trip you. You don't owe Sarah or her family anything at this point. The legal side of it is clear. You're not responsible for that debt. Just stick to your guns. If she or her family try to push it, we'll handle it. I let out a breath, the tightness in my chest loosening just a little. Thanks, I muttered. I wasn't looking for comfort, but right now, Richard's certainty was the only thing that kept me from going under. After I hung up, I sat there, staring at the empty walls around me. Linda's words still lingered. Sarah's family had always treated me like I was disposable, like I was just someone to clean up after their mistakes. But I wasn't doing it anymore. This time I was done. And I knew that the fight wasn't over. This was just the beginning. A few days later, I was sitting on the couch, my mind drifting through everything I still needed to deal with. Canceling appointments, figuring out what to do with the apartment, the mountain of debt Sarah had left behind. I had just started to shut it all out when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I picked it up without checking the name. It was Emma. Jack, she snapped as soon as I answered. What the hell is going on? Why did you stop paying the ring bill? I leaned back against the couch, running my fingers through my hair. I wasn't in the mood for this. Because Sarah broke off the engagement. She moved on with Mike. The financial arrangement we had for the ring doesn't exist anymore. That's not good enough, she shot back, her voice rising with each word. She's already having enough problems, Jack. You know how much stress she's under right now. You're just going to leave her with that debt. I wasn't surprised, but it still felt like a slap. I didn't have the energy to get angry anymore. I felt more numb than anything else. Emma, it's not my responsibility. Sarah made her choice. She's the one who left. She can figure it out now. I'm done. There was a pause on the other end. I could almost hear her trying to process what I was saying before she came back at me, anger bubbling in her voice. You're being so unfair. You're just going to ruin her life because she made a mistake? You know she didn't mean for any of this to happen. You're just being petty. I'm not being petty, I said, trying to stay calm. She ended the engagement, and I'm not going to keep paying for a ring that isn't even a part of our future anymore. You can't keep acting like it's all my fault. Emma didn't back off. You're ruining her, Jack. You know that, right? She's freaking out about this. And now you're just going to leave her high and dry? You're a piece of work. I could feel my pulse quickening. But I didn't yell. I didn't lose my cool. You don't know what it's like to be the one left behind. She made her choice, Emma. She's not a victim here. Another silence followed. Then, in a more clipped tone, Emma said, Fine, but don't be surprised when this comes back to bite you. Sarah's not the only one who's hurt in all this. I didn't reply. I just hung up. The room felt even quieter after that. Like everything was settling around me in a thick layer of tension I couldn't escape. I stared at the phone in my hand, my fingers itching to throw it across the room. But before I could shake it off, it buzzed again. This time it was Sarah. "Jack, why haven't you been making the payments for the ring?" she demanded, her voice frantic. "I don't have the money to cover it. My credit's getting ruined, and you're just letting it happen." I let out a long breath. "Sarah, the ring is yours. You're the one who signed for it. I'm not paying for something I didn't agree to in the first place. You chose Mike. I'm not part of your life anymore. I can't do this on my own." Her voice cracked, like she was about to break down, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You're not even trying to help me. You're just throwing everything away like it doesn't matter." "No, you're throwing everything away, Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "You broke up with me. You chose him. I'm not going to keep paying for a future that's not mine." There was a long, tense silence before she spoke again, her voice colder now. "You really don't care, do you? You're just walking away from everything we had. Just like that." I felt something snap inside me. I did care, Sarah. I cared enough to stay. I cared enough to fight for us. But you made it clear that I didn't matter. You made the choice. You can't blame me for that." Her voice grew louder, more desperate. "I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. And now you're just going to punish me for everything." "I'm not punishing you," I said, finally letting my anger show. "I'm done. I'm done being the person you can walk all over. I'm done making excuses for you. Your actions have consequences, Sarah, and you've got to deal with them." Her response was sharp, bitter. "I hate you, Jack. You've always been so cold. I can't believe I ever trusted you." The words stung, but I didn't let them show. I'd heard enough. "Goodbye, Sarah," I said, cutting the conversation short. "I'm not going to keep doing this." I ended the call, and for a moment, I just sat there in the silence that followed. I felt drained, like I had nothing left to give. I had made the right decision, I knew that, but it didn't make it easier. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the anger, the disappointment, pressed down on me harder than ever. But there was relief in that silence, too. It was over. It was done. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, I could start thinking about what I needed to do next. I just didn't know what that was yet. But I would figure it out. The phone buzzed again, and for a moment I was convinced it was Sarah or one of her friends. But when I checked, it was Richard, my lawyer. He must have seen my name pop up and known I was about to lose it. "Jack," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "I just got word from Sarah's lawyer." I rolled my eyes. "What now?" "Relax," Richard continued, his tone more soothing than I expected. "It's a civil matter. There's nothing here that stands up legally. She can't force you to pay for that ring. Not now that she's broken off the engagement." I leaned back against the wall, letting out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "So, she's trying to make me pay for it?" "Pretty much," Richard confirmed. "Her lawyer sent a demand letter. They're claiming you owe her $80,000 because you're the one who benefited from the engagement, and now you're backing out. It's all baseless." I felt a knot in my stomach loosen a little. The thought of Sarah trying to drag me into a legal battle had been eating away at me. "And you're sure I'm in the clear?" "Absolutely," Richard said. "The debt is in her name, Jack. She's the one who signed for it. The fact that she ended the engagement means there's no contractual obligation for you to pay for that ring anymore." I let that sink in. For a second, I thought maybe it was all just a big mess of legal jargon. But hearing Richard say it with such confidence made it feel real. "So what happens now? Is she going to take me to court or something?" "If she tries, we'll crush her case," Richard said. "You're in the right here. You stopped paying for the ring after the engagement ended. She's the one who left, not the other way around. Her lawyer doesn't have a leg to stand on. It's over." I didn't know whether to feel relief or frustration. On the one hand, I was glad to know I wouldn't have to spend my life paying for a ring I had no business buying in the first place. But on the other hand, the idea that she was still trying to manipulate me, still trying to drag me into her mess, made my blood boil. "And what about the apartment?" I asked because I wasn't sure how far this thing would go. "You're good there too," Richard assured me. "She left voluntarily. No eviction, no legal claim. As far as I'm concerned, she can't come back for anything unless you say so, and you don't have to let her. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I fully believed it. The thought of her showing up at the door again, demanding her stuff, was still a little too fresh. But Richard's words helped ease the pressure in my chest. So, I'm really out of this? I asked, wanting to hear it again, needing the confirmation. Yeah, you've got nothing to worry about. She's the one holding all the cards now, but she's the one who has to deal with the fallout from her choices. I let out a breath, this time one that actually felt like relief. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. I hadn't realized just how tense I'd been, constantly bracing for the next attack, the next demand. The idea of being free from all of this, of not having to deal with her or her family anymore, was almost too good to be true. Thanks, Richard, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I really appreciate it. No problem, Jack. Just make sure you keep all the documentation. If anything else comes up, we'll handle it. I hung up and sat there in the quiet of the apartment, my phone still in my hand. It wasn't over, not really. I knew Sarah wouldn't just give up. I could already hear her blaming me to whoever would listen, trying to paint me as the bad guy. But at least now I had the law on my side. I pushed myself up off the couch and walked over to the kitchen, grabbing a bottle of water. I took a long drink, letting the cold hit the back of my throat. It wasn't the relief I'd expected. I still felt like a wreck, like someone had taken a bat to my chest and left me to figure it out. But there was something different now. I wasn't drowning in it anymore. I wasn't trapped. I didn't have to keep cleaning up her mess. I didn't have to keep paying for the dream she had left behind. The weight I'd been carrying for so long was starting to lift, just a little, and I could almost taste what freedom felt like. I wasn't going to pretend it didn't hurt. I wasn't going to pretend I wasn't still angry. But I was finally starting to feel like I had a chance to rebuild, to move forward. And maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't let Sarah or anyone else drag me back down again. I wasn't just the guy who'd been left behind anymore. I was the guy who was done. It was a few days later when I heard the knock on my door. It was late, maybe 9 or 10 at night, and I was in the middle of trying to figure out how to fix the mess of paperwork I had to deal with. I wasn't expecting anyone, but something about the knock felt familiar, like I already knew who it was. I stood up, walking over to the door, not sure if I was ready for whatever was about to happen. I opened it slowly, and there she was, Sarah. She looked different, like someone who hadn't slept in days, eyes wide and red, her face a mix of anger and desperation. She was holding a suitcase in one hand, a small carry-on, like she was about to move in. "Jack," she said, her voice shaky. "I need to come in. I need to get my stuff." I could feel my pulse pick up. "What? You can't just show up here, Sarah. You walked out of this apartment. You left. You can't come back and act like nothing happened." Her eyes flashed, and she stepped forward like she thought I was just going to step aside and let her in. "I don't have anywhere else to go, Jack," she said, her voice catching. "I need to get my things. I'm not asking for a lot, just a few things. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I just need my stuff." I kept the door half open, not letting her through. "You don't get to just waltz back in here like everything's fine. You left. You abandoned the apartment, and now you have to follow the proper channels to get your stuff. You need to go through my lawyer. I'm not doing this in person." She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "Are you serious right now?" she spat. "You're really gonna be this petty, Jack? After everything we've been through, you're going to refuse me a few things." I didn't budge. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore, Sarah. You left. I don't owe you anything." Her face twisted in frustration. "You're just going to throw me out like this? You're going to act like I don't matter anymore? What happened to the guy who used to care about me? I need my things. I'm not asking for charity." I stood my ground, trying to stay calm even though the anger was crawling up my throat. "You need to get your things through my lawyer. I'm not letting you in here, and that's final. You're not welcome back in this apartment after what you did." For a moment, she just stared at me, as if she was waiting for me to change my mind, but I didn't, couldn't. She had made her choice, and now it was my turn to stand firm. "Fine," she muttered, her voice low and bitter. You're really gonna be this cruel, huh? She slammed the suitcase down on the floor, but didn't move to pick it up. I turned around and grabbed my phone, dialing Richard's number before she could say anything else. Felt like I was back in control for the first time in weeks. Sarah was a mess, but I wasn't gonna let her drag me back into it. Richard picked up on the second ring. Jack? He asked, probably seeing my name pop up. Yeah, it's me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah's here. She's at the door, demanding her stuff. She says she doesn't have anywhere else to go, and she wants me to let her in. Richard didn't hesitate. You don't have to let her in. She abandoned the apartment. That's legally your space now. She can't just come back and take her things whenever she feels like it. Tell her to go through the proper channels. She can contact me if she wants. I felt a weight lift off my chest, just hearing him say that. I put the phone down and looked at Sarah, who was standing there, shaking with anger, her eyes flashing. You heard him, I said, keeping my voice steady. You need to go through my lawyer. I'm not letting you in. She glared at me for a moment, then picked up the suitcase, muttering under her breath. You're unbelievable, Jack. You're gonna ruin everything. You've already taken everything from me. Now you're gonna take my stuff too. I didn't reply. I just stood there watching her. Part of me wanted to reach out to try to ease the tension, but I couldn't. She had already taken so much from me. I wasn't going to let her take control again. With one last, furious look, Sarah turned and stormed down the hallway. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the silence, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt. She was gone, and part of me felt like I was finally free. But another part of me, maybe the part that had cared for her, felt that old tug of regret. Couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend any of this hadn't happened. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it for a moment. I didn't want to feel guilty. I didn't want to let her manipulate me anymore, but I couldn't help it. The silence that followed felt so final. I had made the right decision. I knew that, but it still hurt. It was a couple of days after Sarah had stormed off that I heard another knock at the door. This time it wasn't Sarah. It was the sound of authority, 3 police officers standing on the other side. I opened the door, and immediately one of them said, Are you Jack Lambert? Yeah, that's me, I replied, already sensing where this was going. Ma'am, one of the officers called out, stepping aside to reveal Sarah standing behind them. She looked just as frantic as the last time I saw her, clutching a bag in her hands like she was ready to fight her way in. She claims you've illegally evicted her, the officer continued, glancing at me with a neutral expression. I exhaled, but kept my cool. I wasn't about to let this turn into another scene. I haven't evicted anyone. She left. I didn't make her leave. Sarah, standing behind the officers, immediately jumped in. You know damn well I didn't leave. You locked me out. You changed the locks on me, Jack. I have nowhere else to go, and you're just going to leave me out here like this. I took a deep breath and motioned toward the door. Look, you're going to need to take this up with my lawyer. I legally changed the locks after you left. You abandoned the apartment, Sarah. You ended the engagement. I don't know what else you want me to say. The officers looked at each other. One of them stepped forward and raised his hand. Do you have any documentation to back up what you're saying? I nodded and stepped back into the apartment, reaching for the folder of documents I'd kept. Proof of the lease, the lock change, and the official notice of abandonment. I handed them over to the officers, who quickly skimmed through everything. While they were looking over the papers, Sarah started shouting again, her voice getting louder. This is bullshit, Jack. You're just being malicious. You're trying to ruin my life, and I'm not going to let you do that. I stayed calm. I'm not trying to ruin anything. You chose to leave. You chose Mike. You can't just show up here when things don't go your way. The officer flipped through the papers and nodded to his partner. Everything seems to be in order. You're legally within your rights, Mr. Lambert. Sarah didn't seem to care. This is a damn trap. You don't even care about me. You just want to see me suffer. You're a monster. Her words were sharp, but they didn't land. I had heard them all before, and I wasn't going to let them break me anymore. I looked her in the eye. I cared enough to give you everything, Sarah. I cared enough to try. But you didn't want any of it. You chose him. You're the one who walked away from this. She stepped forward like she was about to lash out, but the officer quickly put his hand on her shoulder, stopping her. Ma'am, you need to calm down. If you want to retrieve your belongings, you'll have to go through the proper legal channels. You cannot enter the apartment without permission from Mr. Lambert. The words hit Sarah like a slap, and for a moment, she just stared at the officer, completely thrown off. But then, the anger returned, stronger than ever. This is ridiculous. You're all just letting him get away with everything. I can't believe this. One of the other officers spoke up, more forcefully this time. Ma'am, we're not going to stand here and argue. You need to follow the process. You can't just force your way into the apartment. I could see the rage on Sarah's face, but it was like watching a storm that had finally run out of wind. The fight left her, and she slumped back, shoulders drooping in defeat. She turned on her heel, her suitcase still in hand, and stormed off down the hall, not looking back. I watched her leave, the tension in my chest finally releasing, but there was no joy in it, no victory, just the strange, hollow feeling of relief. The kind of relief that came with knowing the fight was over, but also knowing it would linger in ways I couldn't yet understand. The officers stayed for a moment longer, making sure everything was settled. After confirming that Sarah had left and that the situation was under control, they left, but not without giving me a nod of approval. You're in the clear, Mr. Lambert. Just make sure you keep everything documented in case anything else comes up. Thanks, I said, closing the door behind them. I stood there for a minute, letting the silence of the apartment settle in. I felt strange. Part of me wanted to feel some kind of satisfaction, but it wasn't there. All I felt was tired. Exhausted, really, but something else, too. I was done. Finally done with the drama, the manipulation, the blame. It was over. I didn't let myself think about Sarah anymore. Not for a second. She had made her choice and I had made mine. The apartment was mine again, and the silence felt like a small victory, one I was going to hold on to, no matter what came next. A week after the police had escorted Sarah out, I opened my email to see a new message from Richard, my lawyer. The subject line made my stomach drop. Formal demand from Sarah's lawyer. I hesitated before clicking it open, already bracing for the worst. It wasn't a surprise when I saw what it was about. Sarah's lawyer was demanding $10,000 from me. They claimed I owed her that amount for damages related to her living situation. Specifically, they argued that I had effectively forced her out by changing the locks, and that the stress had damaged her emotional well-being, whatever that meant. They went on to say that I was responsible for a portion of her costs during the breakup. I laughed out loud. Couldn't help it. The idea that I owed her anything, let alone 10 grand, was absurd. I forwarded the email to Richard with a quick note. Please tell me this is as ridiculous as it seems. Richard didn't waste any time responding. His email was a relief, like a deep breath after holding it in too long. This demand is nothing more than a last-ditch attempt. There's no legal ground for it. You never signed anything that obligated you to pay for her living situation. And regarding the ring, as we've discussed before, she's the one who ended the engagement, which means she's on the hook for the debt. You're under no obligation to pay for it. I read his words several times, the tension in my chest easing with each sentence. I wasn't just in the right, I was completely in the right. I didn't have to worry about any of this. Sarah's lawyer didn't have a case, and the more they pushed, the more they were just digging their own grave. Richard attached a draft response that left no room for interpretation. It was clear, firm, and to the point. We are rejecting your demand for $10,000. Any further attempts at claiming damages will be considered frivolous and will be met with appropriate legal action. I hit send without thinking twice. A few days passed in silence, but it didn't last long. My phone buzzed with texts from mutual friends. Some of them were concerned about Sarah, asking if I had heard from her. One of them, a guy I'd known for years, even mentioned that Sarah's financial situation was falling apart. I think she's behind on payments for the ring, he said. I heard she might be late on her rent too. I don't know if she's in trouble or just refusing to face it. Another friend mentioned something about her having trouble keeping up with the new life she was trying to build. She was out there, dating Mike, acting like she had it all together, but everyone who had seen her lately was starting to realize it was all a front. I tried not to care. I really did. But as much as I told myself I was done, it was hard not to feel a little bad. Sarah had been a part of my life for so long. Even after everything that happened, I didn't want to see her fail. I didn't want to see anyone struggle, no matter how much she'd hurt me. But then again, I couldn't ignore the fact that this was all of her own doing. The mess she was in now, that was her problem. She had made her bed when she walked out, when she threw everything away with Mike, when she didn't even think about the consequences of her actions. I sat back and let it all wash over me. The guilt, the pity. It was hard to shake, but I knew I wasn't the one who put her in that position. I had given her everything I had. I had loved her with everything I was. But she'd chosen a different path. And now she was dealing with the fallout. I could feel the anger start to return, sharp and bitter. No matter how much I tried to be calm, no matter how much I told myself I was doing the right thing, the emotional weight of it all was starting to wear on me. I had to keep telling myself that walking away from her, from all of it, was the best thing I could do. For me. I heard from Richard again a few days later. Sarah's lawyer had officially backed down. They hadn't just dropped the $10,000 demand. They'd sent a formal acknowledgement that they wouldn't pursue further claims. It was over. For a brief moment, I thought I should feel triumphant. But I didn't. There was no victory in it for me. All I felt was tired. I was starting to realize something I wasn't quite ready to admit to myself yet. This whole situation, it wasn't just about the ring or the apartment or the money. It was about Sarah taking pieces of me with her. And now, I was left with a pile of broken dreams and the emptiness of everything I had tried to build. But in that emptiness, something else was starting to take root. A sense of control. A sense of power. Maybe it was because I wasn't reacting to her anymore. Maybe it was because, for once, I was making decisions that were for me and not for anyone else. I didn't know how long it would take to fully shake the weight of everything, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was getting there. And that, at least, felt like something. It was finally time. I stood in the living room, the space feeling almost sterile now. Furniture pushed to the side, everything packed into boxes. I'd done it all myself, from the small things to the big ones. Sarah's things were all ready to go, neatly arranged, ready for her to take. I had even gone as far as to make sure it was all properly documented. No chances left for her to say I'd kept anything or tried to mess with her stuff. I'd called Richard to let him know what was happening, and he'd insisted on being here, just in case. He was sitting on the couch, looking calm and collected, like he was used to this kind of thing. I wasn't surprised when I heard the knock at the door. I opened it, and there she was, standing in the hallway, eyes red from crying but somehow still fiery with that familiar anger. She was holding a large bag, looking like she didn't know whether to scream or fall apart. "I'm here for my stuff," Sarah said, her voice tight. I stepped aside, gesturing toward the boxes and bags stacked neatly against the wall. "Everything's packed just like we agreed. Take what's yours and go." She didn't move immediately. Instead, she stood there, glaring at me, like she was waiting for me to apologize, waiting for me to beg her to stay. But I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to beg. Not anymore. "I can't believe you're doing this, Jack," she said, her voice quivering now. After everything we had, you're just going to throw me out like this." I felt the weight of her words, but I wasn't letting her back in. Not in any way. "You chose to leave, Sarah. You ended this. You made the decision to walk away from everything. I didn't throw you out. You did that to yourself." She took a step toward me, her voice rising. "You ruined my life, Jack. I thought you loved me. And now you're treating me like this, like I'm nothing to you. I can't even believe it." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just looked at her, letting the silence hang between us for a moment. "No, Sarah. You ruined it. You made this choice. You walked away. I didn't ask you to. You're the one who decided you'd rather be with someone else. The anger in her face shifted. For a second, it looked like she might cry. But then she straightened up, grabbed the first box from the stack, and shoved it into the suitcase. Fine, she said, but I could hear the edge in her voice. I'll take what's mine and I'll leave. I don't even care anymore. I didn't say anything as she moved through the apartment, taking her things, her movements sharp and quick, like she wanted to get out as fast as possible. She grabbed the last box and turned to me, glaring once more. This is all your fault, Jack. You're going to regret this. She paused, then added, You really think you're better off without me? You'll see. You'll see what happens when I'm gone. She didn't wait for a response. She turned, walking quickly toward the door, suitcase in hand, box under her arm. As she passed through the threshold, she gave me one last look, this mix of contempt and sadness. And then, without another word, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there for a moment, just listening to the silence. Felt different now, thicker somehow. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long years really was finally gone. I felt a strange mix of relief and something else. Maybe it was sadness, maybe guilt, maybe just the finality of it all. But I knew deep down that I had made the right decision. I had done the right thing for me. Are you good? Richard's voice cut through the silence. I looked over at him, and he gave me a nod, his expression neutral but supportive. Yeah, I said, breathing out slowly. I'm good. I walked over to the window, watching Sarah's figure disappear down the hall. I didn't feel any desire to chase after her. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just empty. And in that emptiness, there was peace. It was over, and that was the only thing that mattered. I turned away from the window, feeling a shift inside me. A new beginning, or at least the possibility of one. The apartment felt like mine again, but it felt different. Less like a place where memories were made and more like a place I could now reshape into something that was just for me. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be mine.